Hey guys, it's Amy here. Today I have a beautiful, really easy hazelnut truffle recipe for you. So let's dig right in. We're gonna get started with some cacao paste that's been melted down in a bowl. We're gonna add our coconut oil, and that's gonna keep it nice and soft. We're sweetening this with some light, or you can use dark, maple syrup. Next up is a little bit of roasted hazelnut butter. You can use raw if you'd like, but the roasted hazelnut butter gives a beautiful flavor all the way through this ganache. We're using some tamari now, and tamari adds depth of flavor and really rounds out all the flavors that are in the ganache. Next up, we're gonna add a little bit of coconut sugar, and lastly, we're gonna do some cinnamon powder. All right, now we're gonna whisk it up to combine. All right, now let's get this mix into a piping bag. And we're gonna pipe this into the cavity of the silicone truffle mold that we're using. We're gonna fill it about 3/4 of the way. Now reserve some of this mixture because you're gonna need it for topping up the truffles at the end. Once that's all done, we're going to insert a candied hazelnut. You can use a roasted hazelnut, or you can just use an activated hazelnut, so a hazelnut that's been soaked for about 8 hours, rinsed and dehydrated, whatever you prefer. And we're just gonna push that not all the way down to the top, just a little bit so it goes right down under the surface. We want that to stay central in the truffle. Now you're gonna take an offset spatula and just scrape the top so that it's nice and flush with the mold. And that's it. We're gonna pop that in the freezer, or you can put it in the fridge for about maybe sort of an hour, or the freezer for about 20 minutes until they're set really firm, because you have to kind of really push these out of the mold, so you want them to be completely firm. All right, I had these in the freezer, so they set in about 20 minutes. So now we're just gonna pop them out of the mold. So I like to turn the mold over so that they don't go flying all over the place. Turn the mold over, and then you have to create a little bit of a gap of air before pushing the truffle out. If you just try and straight push it out, it's just not gonna come out. So just create a little bit of a gap there, and then gently push the truffle out. All right, so let's set up our enrobing station now. So what we're gonna need is a bowl of tempered chocolate, latex gloves, and a bowl of cocoa powder. And we're gonna take one truffle at a time. We're gonna dip it in the chocolate, and then we're gonna roll it in the palms of our hands. And that's gonna give a lovely texture. I mean, aside from coating it, obviously, it's gonna give a really nice texture to it as well. The next thing it's gonna give texture is when you drop it into the bowl. So you'll see here that I let it roll from the palm of my hand all the way down my fingers and then drop into the bowl. And you'll see that nice texture that creates. Then when we get it into the bowl, it's really important that you use even just a fork, but I'm using what's called a dipping fork, a round one. And I'm rolling it around in the cocoa powder, and that's gonna also add to the texture because it pulls at the chocolate as you're doing it and creates multi-layers inside of the truffle, where you can see these really lovely little like craters and stuff like that in the chocolate. It gives an intrigue to the chocolate. All right, now that you've completed your beautiful hazelnut truffles, these store really well in the fridge. It's the best place to keep them. Because of the coconut oil in this recipe, in the truffle, it's gonna be quite soft at room temperature. So keep these in the fridge, and you can keep them in there for about a month. If you wanted to make those lovely candied hazelnuts to go inside with the beautiful little crust on the outside, this is how you do it. So we're gonna start with hazelnuts that have been soaked for about 8 hours and rinsed and drained. Then we're gonna add some maple syrup, a bit of tamari, again for that rounded flavor and a little bit of saltiness. And then we're gonna mix that up. And I normally will add the coconut flour at this stage, but it's good to show you why we add the coconut flour. So you can see this puddle of maple syrup at the bottom. And the trouble with round nuts like this is that it'll slip right off like that. So you'll end up with a puddle of maple syrup on the bottom of the Teflon sheet when you're dehydrating, and you lose all that flavor. So the best way to capture it is to add a bit of coconut flour, a little bit at a time, and mix it up until you get used to how absorbent it is, because coconut flour is highly absorbent, so you don't need much to bring that together into a nice crust around the hazelnut. So you see here how it's starting to crust around the hazelnut. We'll just add a little bit more, and now you can see it's totally dry and crusted around the hazelnut. So we'll pop this onto a tray right into the middle and dehydrate them for about 15 to 20 hours on 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And then once they're done, they're nice and crispy like this, and this beautiful crust on the outside. It's so lovely. So you can store these in an airtight container, room temperature. Once they're cool, you can cover them, but don't seal them until they're cooled from the dehydrator. And these will keep for months. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and subscribe to my channel.